Wichita with no repeats. So Joe, I'm going to give you a favor and let you start tonight. No repeats.
Well, you're starting out first.
Yeah. Touche.
I'm Joe Getz. I'm live in Whitetail neighborhood. Yeah, without repeats that we've all heard.
No, just no repeats tonight.
Oh, just tonight. Oh, well, traffic flow around town, easy. I've been to large towns before.
I'm Sam Lindemann. I'm in the Bonnie Bray edition. And my favorite thing is Nifty Nut House. No,
I was going to say that.
I know, because you always say that. No, I think it's how Wichita's really been progressing here in the last few years. It seems like they're really moving in the right direction.
I'm David Babish in Willow Band, and we went and saw Shakespeare in the Park. I like those outdoor venues, free, a lot of fun.
Good evening, Alicia Sanchez, Sycamore Village. My favorite thing right now is Red, White, and Boom, which is happening here in the city of Wichita on July 4th. So, big, yep, making a shameless plug, but fireworks and the celebration of families and everything.
My name is Mike Elstead. I'm on East Pawnee. I've got a brand new baby, and I would say I'm happy about the access to healthcare for families around here.
Again, I'm Becky Tuttle, City Council member for District 2, and we're going to Music Theater on Sunday to see Sound of Music, and I'm super excited. So our performing arts community does a really great job.
Nick Howell, Savannah, my family being from here in the Catholic community. Nazir Justly, East Kellogg, the people in Wichita are great.
Keith Lane, Sierra Hills. I enjoy all sports activities, so I'm looking forward to the ballpark and all those things. So that'd be me. Golf, yeah.
And I'm Corey Buckler, the Community Services Representative for District 2. And there are lots of great places to get a good beer in Wichita.
All right.
Especially some local.
Yeah.
All right. We all received a copy of the agenda. Does anyone have any additions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to adopt and approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Fantastic. We all got a copy of the minutes. If anybody does anybody have anything they need to have changed? Any additions, corrections? Great job, Corey. Looks like they were perfect. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve. Same. Second? Alicia? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Abstain. Mike's been abstaining with me. Perfect, thank you. Is anybody here to speak about any issues that are not on the agenda this evening? So I know we have the zoning case, we have the budget overview, and we have the sanitary sewer improvement. Is anybody here to make public comments of anything else? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. We're going to go on then to staff reports. Let's start with fire.
Can you read it up there?
Sure, you do wherever you want.
I suppose. I am Jason Jones. I'm a captain normally down in South City at 22, but I've been filling in for Chief Newby, who is a Battalion 3 chief at number 9. I've been there about a month, and I'll be there probably until they decide who they're going to promote for Chief Newby, who's going up to Deputy Chief of Operations. Our report tonight is we've had 18 fire alarms in the month of May. There was 44 service alarms, which those could be anything from water leaks or things of that nature, and then 313 medical alarms in all of District 2. However, we did have a significant fire our last shift, which would have been 6-7 at 8610 East 34th Street, Suite 1. It was a large commercial building fire, which we controlled rather quickly, but we did have around $100,000 in structural damage and $50,000 in property. So the fire cause was from a dust collector from an operating machine that they use there. It's an airplane manufacturing place. We have some exciting news. I think most people may know about the new truck company that's on track in our far northeast station, number 18 on Webb Road. So that made that facility have 2 large pieces of apparatus, an engine and a truck company, which that was partly funded by a grant that the fire department received. And then just to let everyone know down in the southeast area that the road maintenance at Pawnee and probably Greenwich, has not included the ability for Station 20 to respond, even though it kind of looks like it does. But the maintenance crews down there have been working with the fire department, and as they progress down there and make that intersection better, they work with the firefighters to make sure that they can get out of the building efficiently. So, does anyone have any questions? Okay, so next time there'll be someone here with a fireworks report, I'm sure.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Be safe. Community police.
Hi, how is everyone doing this evening?
Good.
So I typically, I'm sure that you guys probably don't recognize me. I am typically in District 3 and 1. However, we have a new officer to our community policing team. This is Officer Shelton, so he will be covering.
All of you guys, pretty much.
That's right.
So,
So I wanted to come with him tonight just to kind of, introduce you to him. And then since I'm new to your district, I'm not quite sure exactly what it is you guys like to hear for your reports. But what we can say is that in your particular area, and I'll let him, because he's reviewed the reports a little bit better than I have, but you guys have a huge auto larceny issue, so I'll let you.
I know you guys have no problems with the traffic or the abandoned vehicles. You guys are all good there, right? Because I've been stickering a bunch of them over. They pop up just as fast as I can sticker them. But I do know that problem. I've been on that problem. Your guys' major problem right now, which always this time of year, it's getting warmer. We have more people out running around the neighborhoods till wee hours of the morning. And the largely of the autos have spiked significantly in your area for sure. We are addressing that issue now. We're going to be doing some different things that we've done in the past. You're going to see some guys on bikes a lot more, bicycles that probably you haven't seen in a long time. That's going to be implemented this summer. And we will be riding in the wee hours of the morning too. So most of you probably won't see us then, but we will be out there. Because more times than not, this is a small group of people. They're actually hitting Andover too. So we're in the process of identifying those guys, if they're Wichita people or if they're Andover people. But your area is getting hit the most. So let you know we do know about that, and we're gonna hit that full steam this summer. So is there any questions for me? That's good if there's not.
No, we do, with that, I'm sorry, with that, I do want to put out there that if you see something, you say something. I'm sure you guys have heard that quite a bit, but we do encourage you guys to do that because you guys are the ones that are out there. You're going to see it first before we do. So if you do see something, please say it. I do know that there's been a few people that we've talked to recently that have said they are calling their community policing officer when things are occurring rather than calling 911. Unfortunately, we can't work 24 hours a day, so we're not always here. So it's best if you call 911, get it reported, get officers on your way, and then let your CP officer know so that they can address it at a later time. So
one of the hardest things about that crime for us is identifying the people. It's a fast crime. I mean, most people, these are people who are driving in the neighborhood, kicking a guy out, he's running down the block, and he's checking 50 cars in the matter of 2 minutes. And that's literally how fast they just run down and start doing handles, and they're gone. So those are the people who have Ring doorbells especially. Ring doorbells have been a huge tool for us because they come right up there and we can get their face. And 9 times out of 10, if we see them, that's just the hardest part. If we see them, somebody's gonna know. We all know these guys. They just didn't roll out of bed this morning, decide I'm gonna start breaking into cars today. They've been doing it for a long time. So if you hear your neighbors that catch somebody on Ring, feel free to email me, and I'll come to your house and look at it myself, and then I'll pull it. So that'll help us out a lot if you hear anything, so.
Yeah, so, and remember just to make sure you're locking your doors, not leaving your valuables in there, and those types of things, just to help yourself out as well as us.
They're not gonna break your window.
No.
Cases have shown they're not gonna break your window. Now, if you have a computer case sitting in your back seat and your doors are locked, they're gonna break your window. That's just, I mean, it just shows they're not gonna do that. So keep them locked and don't put stuff in there that you can see when you walk by it, and you guys will be fine. So.
A reminder, National Night Out, I don't know if we'll see you again. I'm sure we will before August, but National Night Out is coming up August 13th, so just to put that out there. And then for Officer Shelton, is there anything specific you guys would like for him to report to you when he comes for the next few meetings, or however long?
You guys just want the latest things that are going on, or?
Yeah, that's usually what they do.
Okay.
Okay.
Some of the statistics and, tips like you gave us, that's always very helpful.
Great.
Perfect.
No problem.
Thank you
All
very
All right.
much.
Uh-huh.
Thank
Be
you.
safe. Thank you. Park and Rec. Okay. No report, Savannah, libraries.
I'm Savannah Ball. I'm the manager here at the Rockwell branch. I just have a couple things I wanted to touch on. We have the summer reading program at the Wichita Public Library continues through July 19th. We have 3 programs for different age levels. Kids and teens are encouraged to read for 20 minutes a day, and then after each 10-day reading cycle, they're eligible for prizes. So you can go on our website and get more information about that. This year, our theme is A Universe of Stories. During the summer, we also ramp up our programming a lot. We have several good programs that are coming up here at Rockwell for kids and teens so they can explore and create this summer. We're going to have an egg drop lab on June 18th from 2:30 to 3:30. The Wichita Griots will be here from 2:30 to 3:15 on June 21st. We'll have the Mad Scientist walking on the moon from 2:30 to 3:15 on June 27th. And we'll have Space Camp from 2:30 to 3:15 on June 28th. Any questions for me?
And I know it's not in our district, but do you want to mention anything about the July 27th and 28th, the tech? Is that I'm trying to look for?
Our teen hackathon?
Yeah.
Yeah. That will be at the Advanced Learning Library, and I believe they're meeting weekly for teen hackathon. Yes.
Is registration?
Or one weekend, Saturday, July 27th, Sunday, July 28th. Registration begins June 1st, so a few days ago, yeah. And that's just a competition for teens that are ages 14 to 18 to encourage collaboration, innovation, and creativity. And they're gonna work together in groups to use technology to solve problems that are related to local health and wellness. So we're all looking forward to that too.
Any questions for Savannah? All right, thank you, Savannah, thank you. All right, and then Gary, are we getting a twofer review tonight?
Yes,
Are you gonna do
you're
public
okay
works
with
and
that.
utilities?
Gary Jansen, city engineer. So I used to come to these meetings every month, and then we decided it was better just to do once a quarter to give some updates on capital projects. So that's what I'm gonna talk about tonight. Everybody got a handout that's got a yellow map on it that I'm gonna get to as the last part of this. I wanted to make a quick comment, council member, about how you start this meeting. I think I heard Joe make a positive comment about traffic. That's the reason why you should let there be repeats, so that multiple people could say the same thing, right? I'm sure they all want it. So I appreciate that comment. I'm sure everybody's aware we still got a lot going on East Kellogg. It's technically 2 different projects, but it's all become one. It's the same contractor, which has been a real benefit to us. Our original schedule was to have the Webb Road interchange completed by the end of this year, and we're still tracking to have that substantially completed. The biggest thing that will happen with that is to get the Webb intersection open to turning movements in all directions, because we've had left turns restricted there for several years now, and that's obviously a big impact. We're tracking towards getting that done at the end of this year. And then the Greenwich project, everything else K96 was not scheduled to be completed until late 2021. We have made some considerable changes, and it's all because of the great work that Wildcat Construction has done and the benefit of having them on both projects. Right now, as long as we don't go through this deluge again and have monsoon season more than once, we anticipate having traffic on the freeway through the entire project by the end of this year. That doesn't mean we're going to be done, but it helps tremendously to get traffic onto the middle part of the highway and the freeway so we can finish everything else around it. So there's a lot of things that go into these big projects. You know, overall total project cost is over $250 million. So there's a lot of things that happen here. There's a lot of landscaping, aesthetic enhancements that happen after the big traffic portions are done. So we've got a ways to go, but if you've had a chance to be out there, it's starting to really take shape. There's some stuff that looks pretty cool. You know, with Kellogg's going under Webb, and you can see it coming out of the ground, going over Greenwich. You really see that part starting to take shape. The Greenwich and Zelta bridges have got some really cool cut steel artwork along the face of the bridge that's going to be backlit with LED lights. It's going to look really cool when it's done. That's starting to come together and really look like something. The walls are starting to get painted. So we've had a lot of luck with that project. Things have gone really well. Overall, the weather has been fairly cooperative as far as timing of when we've been working. So everything's going really good there. And we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything keeps going well. We just finished up expansion of the 4 Mile Creek Sewer Treatment Plant near Harry and 159th Street East. When we took over that plant from Sedgwick County some years ago, along with the system that goes with it, it didn't take long for the city of Wichita to expand and to grow in the particular basin that goes into that treatment plant to catch up to the capacity. So we have doubled the capacity of that to be able to treat 6 million gallons per day. That is done and online. You're going to have a formal dedication ceremony hopefully in the next month or two. Make sure to let everybody know about that. But you know, it's a big deal. It's really easy to see what happens on a transportation project like Kellogg. It's real visual. People see what's going on. If you happen to live out in that area of the treatment plant, you saw a lot of things happening, but it's kind of hard to tell what they are. It's not real glamorous, doubling the size of a sewer treatment plant, but it's important to all of us. It's critical to what we do. Everybody who lives in Wichita pays a water and sewer bill. Those are the things that you get out of it, and it's really that's a public health and safety issue if we don't do those things. So we're really proud of having that done and the ability to be able to have the funding to do that. 127th Street from 13th to 21st Street is now finally back open in both directions. We had some issues with that project, more than we expected, took longer than we thought. But it's a nice project. If you've seen the 3 lanes and on-street bike lanes. We've also got the signal there at the Redbud Crossing, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But I think that project turned out really nice. It's been in the works for some time. We finally got that done. Stryker, if you have not been out to see the Stryker Soccer Complex, I highly recommend you get out and see it, especially if you have any idea what Stryker looked like before we started. It's pretty spectacular. We're also going to have a formal dedication ceremony of that too, and try to bring the Secretary of Commerce down to the Star Bond funding with that. It's a really cool place. The indoor facility is 110,000 square feet. It can do multiple sports in there. It's a full-size soccer field. It can be broken up into smaller fields and play football. They plan to play baseball and softball indoor. We have 10 outdoor fields. All of them are artificial turf. All of them are lit. We made improvements to the stadium. We added seating on the south side, but it just looks really, really cool. It was a big effort on behalf of a lot of people that made that happen. When we first started, we didn't think we had the funding to even put turf on all the fields, and we ended up with something that I think we can all be really proud of. The operators have talked about how it's been a huge success already. They're getting tournaments with 150 teams from all over the Midwest and other parts of the country here to play on the weekends. The State High School Athletic Association made the decision not long after it opened to start having the state championship tournaments there at Stryker. So I think it's going to be a great deal for all of us for a long time. So we're really proud of how that turned out. Greenwich Road improvements from Harry to Pawnee was mentioned by fire. If you happen to live down in that area, there's been quite a bit going on. We have been impacted some by weather. We've had quite a few different intermediate closures at times, some of them not exactly as we had planned. The current closure of Pawnee at Greenwich to through traffic was not our original intent. We'd hoped to keep one lane open. Sometimes even with our best efforts during design and development of a project, you just can't quite see how everything's gonna come together. Public safety is our first priority. We got to working on the first quadrant of that, and it was just not safe to continue traffic through there. It helps to have school out right now, and so we developed a plan to close it through traffic, and we'll have it back open by the time Southeast is back in school. It's gonna get through it quicker, it's gonna save us some cost, and most importantly, be a lot safer for the traveling public and our contractor. A couple more quick things I wanna mention before I'm gonna get to that map. A few upcoming projects in the capital improvement program. At some point here in the next couple of years, we do plan to make improvements to the intersection of Pawnee and 127th, directly adjacent to Southeast High School. We think right now that a roundabout might work pretty well there. The roundabouts can work really well in certain situations and save us the long-term ownership and maintenance of a traffic signal and serve the same purpose. If you look at directional splits of traffic in an area like that, we think it might work. That doesn't mean that's the final answer, but we're kind of looking at that now during design. I mentioned the crossing of the Redbud Path at 127th Street. We're trying to wind things down here on final design to improve the Redbud from K96 all the way to 159th Street East. And I've talked about this before, but I want to mention again, typically on our path improvements, we put concrete paving in for the full width. When we started development of that project, we got a lot of public input, and we heard from a lot of people in the area. They said for two reasons they did not want to do all concrete. One was somewhat because of the natural look of the area. The other was people who runners, said they don't want to run on the concrete, they'd rather run on gravel or something that's like there. We're actually going to make that path both concrete and gravel, about 9 feet of concrete, 5 feet of gravel, and that'll be improved. What's out there now is the old railroad ballast rock. This will be an improved gravel. If anybody's had a chance to go east of 159th Street on the path that Andover improved, it'll be similar to what's out there on the shoulders. So we're kind of excited to do that. It'll be a first that we've done a hybrid path that will serve both bikers, walkers, and runners at the same time. We should be under construction by this fall if everything goes right. And that project is primarily federally funded, which always helps us out. We do have plans under design too to improve Pawnee from Webb to Greenwich. Looking at future development out there with the school and everything else. We're planning to go to 3 lanes there with sidewalks, and that's planned for 2022. So I wanted to talk about the map and the list of projects that you got. Every year in our capital improvement program, we have anywhere between $9 and $10 million dedicated to pavement rehabilitation and repair. This is outside of the potholes that our guys fix every day and the basic maintenance that they do. And we have made quite a few changes over the last 6 years to our, what we call our outsourced pavement preservation program, trying to find a way to get a better return on our investment. So I'll tell you real quick, we used to, back in 2011, prior to then, we would go in on arterial streets and we would do a major rehabilitation. We would take the surface off, we would patch what's underneath, we'd put brand new asphalt on top. We have 5,000, over 5,100 lane miles of roads in this city. In 2011, by using what had been our process at the time, we only touched 80-some miles, 80-some lane miles out of 5,000 because of the cost, unit cost. We made a decision then that something's got to give because we're losing ground in a hurry. We've got quite a few of our streets that are deemed to have 0 remaining service life. Doesn't necessarily mean they're drivable, but based on the standards we've established, they're in a bad place. We started piloting some different things in 2013. We've started perfecting what we think are some things that are working really well, trying to get the best return on our investment. $10 million a year is still not a lot of money for 5,100 lane miles of road, but I think we've done a really good job of finding the sweet spot the best that we can now. We're trying to keep that bottom from getting worse. We're trying to put money into new improvements to keep them better. In a perfect world, if we could go out overnight and fix all the streets in this town, we would turn around tomorrow and start maintaining them with things like preservative seals and things that we can do to protect that pavement that we did not do in the past. So we've got a variety of things going on. You've seen a lot of things throughout this district and others that we've done over the last few years. Some people have kind of questioned what it is that we were doing. I'll give you a good example. It's Rock Road, and I'm going to talk specifically about it because it's on this map again. From 17th Street up to K96, we went in there, did all the patching first, and then put a new surface on it. We also, from 13th to 17th, if you notice where that concrete pavement was, and it was kind of hard to drive over out of your teeth because every single joint would bump, we came in there and did some diamond grinding of those joints and really smooth that out. So we're trying to mix things up here to really do what we can, especially on the major streets, but even on the neighborhood streets also. The last 2 years, the city council dedicated $10 million from the sale of the Hyatt, particularly to residential streets. That was money we were not planning on having. It was quite the bonus to be able to go in and make repairs, and that was dedicated 100% to residential streets that had 0 remaining service life. So we were able to bring those out of the cellar, make a lot of improvements. So I mentioned Rock Road. We were just in there doing 2 different things, the patching first and the surface. We're going to come in this year on Rock Road and put a preservative seal right back on top of what we just did. I know people are going to see the cones and things out there and think, gosh, these guys are at it again. But there is a method to our madness, and this work goes pretty quick. It takes a matter of days typically to get this done. We are going to do a media release and some outreach to the public to let them know what's coming, because 21st Street out west from Hoover, almost Hoover to Maze Road, 53rd from Arkansas to Meridian. Some of these more major streets, the last few years that we did some work on and new surfacing, we're going to come back with this preservative seal. This map is online through the City of Wichita website, and so is this list of streets, particularly for this district. There's a legend on here that shows what different types of work we're doing in each district. You see a lot of streets are black. That's crack seal, primarily on residential streets. Might talk about that real quick. Crack sealing is not real popular with people on residential streets because of how it looks. And I don't doubt it. I get it. It doesn't look ideal. It is absolutely one of the best things we can do to prolong the life of pavement. In where we live, with the changing climate that we have, most people don't realize just what happens. All of you probably have been around here long enough to see in the days that we've had 50 to 60 degree temperature change literally from one day to the next. That can play havoc on pavement, especially when you get a lot of moisture in there that can freeze and thaw. Best thing we can do is to seal cracks and keep the moisture out. I wish we could do something to make them look better, but if we're going to get the best return on our investment, it's not going to be to make the street look pretty. It's going to be to make it structurally sound, to fix what's there and make it last. You'll see a lot of those. You'll see Rock Road there, like I mentioned, from 17th to K96 is in orange, which is that preservative seal I talked about. But the other ones I want to mention in particular is right in the middle of that map are the ones that are blue, where it says ultra thin surface. If any of you all are familiar with Webb Road from 13th to 21st, help is finally on the way. That street has had so many things done to it over the years, especially with development. It's been added on to, it's been taken away, and it looks like we built that street about 20 different times. We're going to come in and do some patching this fall, and then next spring put a new surface on there, so it's going to finally look like a brand new street. We're going to do that same thing on 13th west of Webb, and then also on Central, basically between Webb and 127th Street. So that'll be really good improvements for this district. This is an interactive map So if you go on the city's website, there's a place in there that you can type in any address anywhere across the city, and it'll tell you what type of work is planned to be done, if any. Because some of these areas are a little bit hard to see. You can tell which neighborhood you're in, but maybe not know exactly what's going on. But we think we're in a pretty good place with this program for now. Like anything else, we could always use more money, but I think we're doing a really good job of making it work with what we've got. So that is all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
You got a lot of work on Ross Road. I was wondering about K-96 north of 45th. Plans for that in the near future.
And I can't tell you beyond 2019 without having any other map with me, but I'm happy to look and get back to you. We have got a 40-year model that keeps current the condition assessment of every single road in this town, all 5,100 lane miles. That model literally puts them all together with our available budget and tells us the next place we need to go across the city to maximize our return. It's very possible that there could be something soon, but I don't know, but I'm happy to look.
I can find out.
You won't see beyond 2019 because we can program any road section into the model and tell us when it is, but we don't have that readily available on a map by any means. So it could be, but I can certainly look and let you know.
Gary, one street that I've noticed that is like driving through the Grand Canyon, and it doesn't look like anything's being done to that. Just Douglas.
Yeah.
North of Town East. That is the worst street. They have patched it again, but I mean, there was craters 6-8 inches deep in there.
And I'll look at that too. I had somebody ask me about that not long ago, and I'm drawing a blank on what our staff told us about that. So here's some of the challenges, because I've looked at some of these too, and I've been in the pavement business for 24 years, mostly building new stuff. It's not something for us to necessarily be proud of, but we're catching up with not doing a good job, trying to not even catch up, make a dent in what was done really bad for a long time. And I hate to tell people this, sometimes I wish I carried pictures around, because I'll have people that'll come out and say, look how bad this street is, and I'm looking at it and think, well, you have no idea how bad a street can look. And that's not something we're proud of. What happens, especially with potholes, is a big deal, but we have to take a very close look at everything else in between. And I know it sounds a little counterintuitive, but you can have holes in a road and still have the majority of the road is pretty structurally sound. When you put that into our model, the way that's evaluated the condition, it doesn't necessarily rise to the top. It still leaves itself as patching as needed. And that may not sound like that makes a lot of sense, but I'll look, because now you got me curious. I had somebody ask me about that too, and I'll see what I can find out.
I was encouraged to see you talking about a roundabout out here. And I understand they just turned down a roundabout option at 45th and Woodlawn.
That was the city of Bel Air. I had heard that they had talked about that and kind of put it out for a community vote, and the community said no. So I've seen, we don't have a lot of roundabouts in Wichita. I'm kind of a fan myself if you do them right in the right place. When we first built the one in Delano, there were some issues. The clock tower got run into a couple times. There were people that questioned our sanity, but it's worked really, really well. And I think it just takes a little bit of education. You know, there's one in Central Riverside Park that works pretty well too. It's not a lot of traffic, but it can work really good depending on the traffic split. It's a real bonus to us to not have to maintain a traffic signal too, operationally. So.
A couple of, when they redid 13th Street, I'm thinking now east of 96 a few years ago. There's a lot more truck traffic now than there used to be, particularly the cement plant. And a lot of sand, a lot of cement trucks go by. Was that extra weight taken into?
I'm sure it was. It was actually the county that did that work, but they use the same standards we do. And except for really, really extraordinary measures, all of our arterial streets can handle that loading. There are some areas, if you go, I'll give you an example of southwest of Kellogg and West Street, that's heavy industrial. And every property, every type of land use out there is big trucks, industrial type. We do apply some different standards to the road section than we do on, but most of our arterial streets, they can handle highway traffic effectively. We don't want to spend so much money to overbuild them that it's throwing money away. But we have found a really good balance, I think, that works.
The other question I said arterial, and it really relates to the capital improvements budget we're looking at, but there's so the focus there would be on city freeways. What are, I just don't know what that term is. What would be a city freeway?
The primary freeway for us is Kellogg, 54-400. You know, we've used the local sales tax referendum that was approved in 1985. Since 1990, the city has used over $500 million to expand Kellogg. The county gets a portion of that too, and I'm not exactly sure what they do with their share, but they get a portion of that too, and they do a lot with local roads. But freeway for us is Kellogg.
Gary, what about the turn lane on Kellogg to 143rd? Is that still in the works with
So,
KDOT?
and I appreciate you asking, because I presented that project here probably sometime last year. I'm working with our city manager to sit down with the city of Andover and have some discussion about that. And I'll kind of basically tell you why real quick. We've done a lot. I just mentioned we've spent over $500 million of local sales tax funds to improve Kellogg. The current Kellogg work is the first time we've received outside funding. We received $152 million through the T-Works Highway bill. But the city of Wichita is still, with design right away and all, is probably still contributing over $100 million to that project. So we're going to start approaching $600 million before long. Kellogg and 143rd intersection itself is still in Wichita proper. So the most recent traffic counts we've had since the 143rd Street work was done, there is approximately 30 to 35,000 vehicles a day that go through that intersection, and 75% of it comes from east of 143rd in the morning and goes back at night. Great people live in Andover. It has nothing to do with the turf war here, but trying to be good partners. Our mayor has suggested, and our manager has suggested, and I think it makes some sense, that it may be time for someone else to come to the table and help with some of these improvements, because what happens is those turn lanes in Kellogg and 143rd make it a lot easier and safer for through traffic to go through. And when most of that through traffic is not Wichita traffic, we think a partnership may be in order. So we're working on that.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
I have to say, Gary does an amazing job. There are days where I speak with Gary more than my husband. So thank you, Gary, for all you do and putting up with all of our questions. Yes, there is.
Jimmy, questions we asked.
Sure, yes.
I was going to ask about Douglas improvement east of the river,
To 127th Street.
127th.
There are no plans to improve Douglas right now in that area, and I know that's
And it's about a 4-inch drop on the bridge.
well, so let me back up a minute. I don't know. It's not on here for 2019. I would tell you that there's no improvements to widen the road or expand the road. From a maintenance standpoint, I'd have to get back to you. I know it's not scheduled for 2019, but like I talked about here within our model, what I have to do is go to our maintenance engineer and say, hey, what about Douglas? And he'll tell me. And you know what? I've had some road sections that we found out it was the very next year. But typically you can say, well, it's kind of in this range, but I'm happy to find out. I can give you one of my cards if you want to get back to me. I'd be happy to let you know.
That's one of our biggest concerns for what we're going to talk about if you're interested in being around.
Yeah, I will be hanging around. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
It has a lot of assessment traffic, and now with the addition of all those apartments on 127th in Douglas,
And we're talking 50 miles per hour traffic.
I understand it, and I think needless to say, that I'm sure you would agree that traffic has probably increased since Kellogg's been under construction.
Yeah.
And I hope and I think once Kellogg's done, that you should probably see a little less traffic than you know. Well, you won't know until it's done. So.
But you're lucky if you can get on the road.
And I appreciate that concern. I'm happy to pass it on to the police. That has nothing to do with the condition or the size of the road. People are gonna drive that regardless.
Sure.
All right, so we'll bring it back to the NAB.
Sorry, there was one more
Is it
question.
coming up? I didn't see him, I'm sorry.
So on, you mentioned Webb on 13th Street, Webb over to 96. That is something that's planned this year because of all the potholes and get that research.
Webb from 13th to 21st. Well, we're gonna start working on the patching work this year. And then we're gonna put the new surface on it next spring.
So
I'm sure you would agree that that one's probably needed.
Well, that's a mess,
Yeah.
yeah. So, and the same for, like, Kellogg, 143rd, off of Kellogg, 143rd over at Perry. And of course, they've had a little bump too. And it makes me wonder, the people that we got doing this patch repair, where they take the hump out, it seems like now we create a dip. So we still got bump, but it's like, they need to put more asphalt or some sort of.
I will tell you,
Work.
and I will tell you, I'm gonna defend our contractors a little bit. I'm not a contractor, but I've been around the business long enough. Trying to patch pavement is a lot harder than it looks for the very reason you just described. We all know everything's gonna settle. Asphalt pavement comes out hot. We know at what temperature. They know they've got to put a roller over it. It's really easy when you're building an entire road because it's all built at the same time. It's all going to compact it the same way. Trying to build a patch within existing pavement is really, really challenging. Sometimes we end up with a bump. Sometimes we end up with a dip. Sometimes we get it just right. One of the reasons why we started adding the surface coat to it was to try to help with that issue, because before we were just patching, because structurally you fix the road. People don't like the way it looks, but we were having some bump issues, and by adding the surface layer, it's helping out. I don't ask you to trust me and necessarily believe me 100%, but I'm telling you, we are always on a quest to try to get that right. I don't want to defend every single contractor because there are some that do better than others, but more times than not, it is not a contractor issue. It is a real, real challenge with trying to fix pavement. If we just had the money to replace it all, we wouldn't have those issues. So
All the Hyatt money, that's pretty well spent now.
the Hyatt money is now spent, yes.
So our neighborhood streets, and that was.
Well, there's still, that doesn't mean we're done. Throughout the city in different districts, we are still spending money on residential streets. That was a very specific focus on residential streets that had 0 remaining service lives. These ones were really bad. So if your street you live on, if you think it's bad, you should have seen what those other ones looked like before we got to them. So
We gotta wait, so it's not really like a 5 year, there was only one meeting a few years ago or so, that every 5 years was this plan that it's every neighborhood and every street, and all the 5,000 miles is covered through a period of every 5 years of road. That's really not a fact. No way.
No, probably not. Now, I can tell you that we don't have a goal set here to say touch every street. This is truly based on $10 million a year of a balance of, you heard me talk about, it's not just going after the worst ones first. Because then what happens if we go after the worst ones first, these roads that were in the top half that we're fixing, they're starting to degrade fast. And if we don't get back and do something, then all of them end up in the bottom half again and we've gained nothing. So it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. We're not the only community like this. Cities across the country are in the same boat. Experts say you cannot debt yourself out of this situation if you tried, but we're doing everything we can with the money we've got. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. So I would entertain a motion to receive and file all of the staff reports. So moved. Thank you. A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Fantastic. Thank you very much. Next, we have preliminary budget overview from Lindsay. I'm going to sit up here so I can see the PowerPoint.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Vogt, and I'm from the Budget Office, and I'm here to just give you a preliminary look at our proposed operating budget and our proposed capital improvement program. And I'm going to go ahead and try to say the title on the slides in case anyone's following along at home. Here's a background on zero-based budgeting. Since 2017, the City of Wichita has been using a zero-based budgeting approach to develop our budget. The organization has been pursuing excellence in a focused number of priority programs. This is the mission statement that grew out of that process, and it focuses our budget process. All of the services provided by the City of Wichita align to one of the goals in this mission statement. A budget simulator. I'm not sure if you all have heard much about the simulator. Yes? Okay. Got a demonstration? Good deal. To build on the zero-based budgeting effort, we launched the budget simulator on May 13th. This allows residents to increase or decrease services and see the impact on their property tax bill. We've been reaching out to the community to spread the word, and we invite you to take any of the handouts back there in the basket, or we have flyers available to hang on community bulletin boards. All the information collected in the simulator is confidential, and we'll be compiling the data mid-June, probably here in about a couple weeks. So far, there have been more than 1,000 responses to the simulator, and once we get the data compiled, it'll be posted online. Here's our proposed budget calendar. June, July, and August are the busiest months during the budget process. We kicked off the process with the online simulator, and after it closes on June 15th, we have a social media town hall scheduled for June 26th. After the social media town hall, results from that event and the simulator will be reviewed to develop the proposed budget. The proposed budget will be presented to the city manager, to the mayor, presented by the city manager to the mayor and council on July 23rd, which is a public hearing. There's an additional public hearing on August 6th, and the final hearing is August 13th, which is the day the budget will be adopted. With the social media town hall on the 26th, and the simulator closing here soon, and then the budget presentation isn't until July 23rd. You can see that there's quite a bit of time there for feedback. So we do want everyone's feedback as much as we can get, so we can incorporate that into our budget. All right, a focus on the general fund. The general fund is the principal taxing fund for the City of Wichita. It funds core local government services such as police, fire, parks, court, libraries, and street maintenance. Slower growth is expected than we experienced in 2001 through 2008 due to a changing revenue portfolio. This is mostly due to a decrease in franchise fees and slow local sales tax growth, which I'll describe a little bit later. Assessed valuation is a result of the annual property appraisal process, and this has a big impact on revenue. Here's a pie chart of our general fund revenues. As you can see, property tax is the largest source of general fund revenue at just over 1/3. Franchise fees on utilities such as electricity, natural gas, telephones, and cable TV is 1/5. If you're wondering what that other source is, that's our fees for service, parks, library charges, court fines. So that's a bunch of little things that all add up to that section. It's not one giant thing. The general fund adjusted revenue growth for 2009 through 2018 is shown here. From a financial perspective, 2018 was a good year for the City of Wichita. There was an ending surplus of about $2.5 million. However, when you look back to 2001 through 2008, 2018 would have been a disappointment. The biggest change between the gray bars and the blue bars shown is how the general fund has recovered from recessionary periods. If you look at 2004, there was an 8.1% growth after a year of negative and then yearly no growth. That pattern was typical in prior recessions, 1 or 2 negative years, and then a big bounce back and steady growth. We just have not seen that to be the case over the past 10 years. There's been no big bounce back, and growth has been much lower. Much of this is attributable to changes in technology that impact our franchise fees. Residents have been cutting the cord, which results in decreased telephone and cable TV franchise fees. Improved energy efficiency has also impacted our motor vehicle sales taxes, and online retail impacts sales collections. Recession impact on revenues. Recessions impact city revenues on a lagging basis. During the recession, the interest earnings and sales tax are impacted early, and property tax lags due to the reappraisal cycle. The recession is currently not modeled into our budget projections. Based on the experience of this last recessionary cycle, it's difficult for us to forecast what would exactly happen. All right, on to the general fund expenditures. Providing city services is a labor-intensive business. Nearly 3/4 of expenditures are for salary and benefits. 2 of the most labor-intensive services that we provide are police and fire. This graph shows the police and fire portion of the general fund over a period of time. Most growth in the general fund since 2000 has been in public safety. The graph shows the percentage growth in police and fire in the green compared to the increase in CPI or inflation in the blue, and all other general fund services are graphed in the blue and red squares along the bottom. You'll notice that even when the city of Wichita was experiencing negative growth in years like 2009 and 2012, police and fire expenditures were still growing faster than inflation. In order to balance the budget, reductions occurred in several areas like street maintenance, parks, and libraries. General fund reserves. Each year, the city of Wichita adopts a balanced budget, even when there are years of declining revenues. One of the main reasons for this is in order to retain these general fund reserves. Reserves are important for cash flow, particularly since the largest revenue source for the general fund, the property taxes, are only received twice per year. Reserves provide flexibility, and if needed, they are available in the event of an emergency to sustain operations. Not only do reserves provide flexibility, rating agencies also monitor our reserves. Any decrease in the reserves are viewed negatively. The rating agency feedback is important to interest rates for borrowing funds to finance CIP projects. Having a favorable reserve position allows the city of Wichita to finance projects at a lower rate, which provides more capacity for CIP projects. All right, looking forward. During this planning period, we expect moderate growth with imbalances starting in 2021. Phase 1 of the police staffing study was included in the 2019 adopted budget, so there is ongoing focus on public safety. Staff are involved in ongoing process improvement efforts that will result in cost savings. Here's our new projected outlook. This forecast is based off of current available information. The most significant change is in interest earnings, which is based on the federal funds rate that has been increased 7 times. There is a surplus in 2019 and 2020 is balanced, but the structural imbalance reappears in 2021, which is typical of forecasts. The mayor and city council are focused on investing 2019 on equipment and capital investments that can result in ongoing efficiencies. For example, the one-person pothole patcher that was deployed recently allows for a staff person to be reassigned to street maintenance efforts that were not being addressed previously. All right, now on to the CIP development. The CIP development process prioritizes projects submitted by departments and developing financial capacity models. We consider the impact of each project on the operating budget, which is included in a scoring matrix. And finally, each project is considered for alignment with city council direction. CIP project prioritization. A scoring matrix was developed in 2018. This year, we have scored every project that has been submitted. Some of the items that are scored are aligned to top community priorities. And it's based off of these top priorities, where the project is located, whether or not it is a maintenance project, and the impact of the project on the operating budget. Linking the CIP and the budget. Related to the goal of keeping Wichita safe, the operating budget funds public safety services. In the CIP, there are projects related to street safety as well as equipment for police and fire. Operating budget costs can be increased by larger facilities, but new infrastructure can replace inefficient facilities and thus reduce operating costs. In 2019, $1 million was shifted from the debt service fund to the general fund for the police staffing study. GO at-large background. The current mill levy for the debt service fund is at 7.5 mils, and this is the lowest since the 1970s. This places constraints on the CIP when considering projects funded by GO obligation at-large funding. Financing the CIP. The largest categories of projects are water and sewer utilities, arterials, and public facilities, which includes police and fire equipment and other heavy equipment. For the total CIP, most revenue is from utilities, special assessments, and the debt service fund. This is our GO at-large fund. Flexible funding sources. There are 3 taxing funds that fund community projects in the CIP that are not associated with enterprise funds. The enterprise funds being water, sewer, stormwater, and the airport. The debt service fund can be used for any purpose. The transient guest tax or bed tax can only be used for investments related to convention and tourism, such as Century 2 or cultural facilities. The local sales tax fund can only be used for roads, bridges, and highways. Determining debt capacity. Determining debt capacity is important since City of Wichita's debt is amortized over a period of 10 to 20 years. Since the CIP is for 10 years, it is important to have good projections. This is important to comply with legal requirements, bond covenants, and to have a favorable rating agency analysis. Legal debt limit. Kansas state statute specifies the legal debt limit for cities in Kansas. The City of Wichita is at less than 25% of that limit. The debt limit is a greater concern for smaller communities that issue debt infrequently. For example, a small community who's making improvements to a sewage treatment system. City policy and debt capacity. This graph demonstrates the debt capacity for the debt service fund and general obligation at-large projects, which are those financed by taxes. This metric compares debt service payments to property tax revenue. The goal is for debt service payments to be less than 67% of property tax revenue. In the CIP adopted this past August, there is adequate capacity to fund projects. The adopted CIP update. As far as projects go, the aquatics master plan will be accelerated in the next CIP so that all improvements are ready by summer of 2022. Previously, the schedule was stretched out to 2025. There is a focus on more street maintenance and rebuilding projects and less focus on freeway projects. The library branch study is under consideration, which includes improvements at each branch location. 4 police stations were included in the CIP adopted last year. Additionally, some fire stations are being considered this year. All right, and that wraps up the CIP. Is there any comments or questions?
Anyone from the DAB have any questions? Dave?
Well, the manager has always been finding useful that here, that he has benchmarks based on peer cities like Lincoln and Little Rock and Charleston. And you're not making any reference to any of those benchmarks except in that one about the debt where we would be below benchmark, which I don't know where where that benchmark comes from.
Sure. We have a pretty robust performance measure program, and we use benchmarks for that program, and we didn't really outline that here. Right now, we're still finalizing our performance measure report from this past year. If there's anything in particular that you're looking
Well, no,
for.
more generally, like police, how much do our peer cities can spend per capita while
Okay.
we're going up? Were we way behind, or were we catching up with them?
Okay, as
What's
far
our
as
excuse
public
for not
safety
being on
spending.
benchmark, that kind of thing?
Okay, our performance measure report will be finalized at the same time as our budget, and it gets posted online. If there's anything in there, the report has several measures, and it says it has a benchmark with each one. If there's anything in particular that you think of that is not on that report, just feel free to let us know, and we can reach out to our peer cities and see if that data is available.
Okay, well, one of the things that makes it different is we have specials and most cities don't, and that impacts our bond rating and our debt capacity. We get away with it.
Yes, that's noted.
Any other questions or comments from Deb? Joe?
Maybe it's on the website, I should have looked. Do we have track charts of the amount of money we've left on the table for various economic development incentives or packages, tax forgiveness for things?
No, I think that is probably a question I would need an economic development expert to help answer for you. I've got my coworker from the budget office here is taking down questions. And I'm just not an expert in that area, so I don't want to give you any wrong information. But we'll get back to you. I can email Becky. We'll get back to you on that.
If you send it to me, Lindsay, I can send that.
Yeah.
That would be a question for you. Good question. Anything else? Hearing nothing else, we need to have a motion to receive and file, correct, Lindsay?
Yes.
All right, so I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Dave, all right, and second? Sam, okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you all.
Have a good night. Be safe going home. All right, so now we have a zoning case, and I'm just gonna preface it. We're gonna let Philip do a presentation, letting us know more about this, and then Gary is our twofer. Actually, you're a threefer tonight, Gary, thank you. And he's gonna give a little, background too that's important to know. And I know there's lots of folks here from the audience, so after we hear from them, then we'll have questions from the DAB. And then after the questions from the DAB, we can turn it to the audience, and we'll allow 3 minutes for questions or comments. And Nick, will you be our timer this evening?
Absolutely.
Thank you. And when you come forward to make questions or comments, just please make sure that you clearly state your name and your address for Corey so that he can get it in the minutes. But I also just want to frame this up by saying there are some issues I know that folks in the community are here concerned about. The only thing, and Gary or Philip jump in at any time, the only thing that we're here to discuss tonight, so when you hear these presentations, keep this in this framework in your mind, is whether or not this property is adequate to be rezoned for multifamily. When it's platted is when the road issues and all of that come into play, not the season. That's not questions that we think about tonight or will address tonight. The only thing is this land, this property suitable to be rezoned for multifamily? Gary, Philip, correct?
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
Thank you, Councilmember Tuttle, members of the DAB, good evening. My name is Philip Zievenbergen. I'm an associate planner with the Metropolitan Area Planning Department. If you remember, we brought this case before you last month. It was determined that it was not appropriately notified to the neighborhood. I sincerely apologize about that. It was an internal error, which I'm assuming happens from time to time, but we rectified the issue and deferred the case. And we're before you this evening. This case was heard by the Metropolitan Planning Commission last Thursday. I'll get into the discussion we had at that meeting in a little bit. This case, if you remember, is to discuss the rezoning of a property located about 127th Street East and East Central. It's along Jackson Heights Street, which is, and the property sits between Jackson Heights Street and Zelta. And the developer is looking to rezone it from what it currently is, which is single family, to TF3, which is two family with the intended use of developing duplexes. We do have Will Clevenger with Garver. He's the agent for the applicant. When he initially submitted a preliminary site plan, it included 27 lots, which would be 54 duplexes. Through the Planning Commission meeting, he did say that there have been some updates to that, and I will let him speak on any updates that he might have regarding the potential future of this property. The area around it is a mix of housing, as we've looked at, not only through site visits as well as aerial maps. Primarily, it is larger lot, single-family homes. However, there are some mobile home parks. There's a duplex development to the south and east of it. There's a recently developed office park to the north along Central, including the patio homes and front gate. In addition, there's a single-family cul-de-sac being developed off of Jackson Heights, which has yet to be completed. There are several houses on there. But what we're seeing is just a little bit more development across the area. This area is becoming a little bit more densified. And that, along with what we're looking at in the community investments plan, which is the long-range planning document that the planning department uses. This area is located and designated for new residential as the city looks to grow. What we also look at is, are there areas that we can take an advantage of existing infrastructure like water, sewer, and because this is an infill project, that also is something we like to see. The further we go out, the more money we spend on new things, and we all just talked about this whole budget of the more we spend in other areas, the less we can spend in other areas. So all of that to say, looking at this as to whether or not this site is appropriate for a duplex zoning, staff has recommended that this zoning is approved. When this case was heard by the Planning Commission, we had a lengthy discussion, and I can say that you guys have some awesome people in District 2, because they unfortunately had to sit through like 2.5 hours of a meeting before this case was even heard. They unfortunately got the short straw with probably one of the more crazy, long-winded Planning Commission meetings we've had in recent history, with some other cases that had some contention to them as well. They were very patient, and they have been very respectful throughout this entire process. But through the Planning Commission meeting, there was lengthy discussion, as Councilmember Tuttle has discussed, of what is appropriate for a zoning case and what is appropriate during the planning portion of the case. Many of the residents that I've talked to, both on phone as well as in person at the meeting, have discussed concerns of increased traffic if this property is developed with, depending on the amount of new residences that would be put in the area, could the local streets handle the capacity of any new cars or the number of new cars? There have been concerns about future drainage. These are the things that Councilmember Tuttle has notified or designated as those are issues that are taken care of during the planning stage. As of right now, this lot is only technically one. So with a rezoning of TF3, technically it would only be one duplex. Obviously, this developer is not rezoning this property with the intention of one duplex. But in terms of the number and the density of what's going in there, that has not been determined yet. And so that's why we look at, is this area an appropriate zoning for two-family residential? And as from a staff perspective and the Metropolitan Planning Commission's perspective, they have recommended that this case is approved. Metropolitan Planning Commission voted 6-3, so it was not unanimous. One last thing that I'll say before I bring Gary up to talk about some of those roads and infrastructure things is now that this case has moved past the Metropolitan Planning Commission, its next step is to go before City Council. They are the ones who take final action. Every case that comes to the Planning Commission goes through a 2-week protest period, which is a state statute where it basically sits in a bin and nothing happens with it for 2 weeks, and it's a legal right for anybody in the area to, if they feel that they disagree with the decision of the Planning Commission, to file a form of protest to potentially influence the City Council, to potentially vote against what the Planning Commission does. That protest period goes till June 20th. You can find protest petitions online at our planning website. I can give that to you. I know it's going to be a little bit of a long address. I unfortunately had the computer locked out. Otherwise, I could show you. You can go to wichita.gov/planning. Let me look at my notes so I can get it correct. So that's the planning landing page. In the middle of the page, you'll see a green button that says application forms. You click that, And then that brings you to a page where we have a whole lot of PDFs, and one of them is called protest petitions. It's a downloadable PDF that you would fill out, and it has to be submitted to the city clerk by no later than 5 p.m. June 20th. So regardless of what happens after this meeting, if you determine that this is something that you would like to protest, that is the official way to do so. The way that it works is if 20% of the land area within 200 feet of this property is in protest to this, it doesn't stop the process. It just requires the city council to vote at a higher approval level than it would be the simple majority if it had not been protested. So that's something that we take a look at once that protest period is done. And Councilmember Becky Tuttle would be well informed of what happens in that process. So just want to give everybody kind of an overview of what we're talking about and what your options are. Once this meeting has concluded, or once this portion has concluded, if you have specific questions for me, we can step outside and I can talk on one-on-one with you about some of those specifics of how exactly to do that, just to save everybody's time and be respectful of the rest of the evening tonight. So would you like them to ask some questions of me, or would you just like Gary to come up and we can ask staff questions together?
Why don't, Jerry, would you mind giving your overview and then we can ask questions together? I think it would be helpful.
Thanks. That was well said, Phil. I just to clarify again, as city engineer, I'm not a planning guy, but we get involved in a lot of these things. And my staff is part of the planning process primarily through plating. So I just add one thing to remind everybody, to reiterate what Phil said. This ground is currently zoned as single family. If the developer so chose to go in and develop as single family, my guess is, and Will can say if I'm way off, there was the idea of 27 lots, 54 total units. Well, at a minimum, you're talking about 27 single family homes. My guess is, if they wanted to change the lot size a little bit, they may even get a little bit more than that. There's going to be a difference in traffic. I wanted to talk about that a little bit. If we look at traffic trip generation standards for residential, is we look at an average of 10 trips a day per residential unit. If you've got 54 units, that's 540 a day. That may seem like a lot to people. That's not, for even for a 2-lane road, can still handle that capacity. But I'll come back to that part in just a minute. If you've got less single-family homes, sure, it's less traffic, but we're talking about the magnitude of a couple hundred a day. From our standpoint, that's negligible. The amount of traffic that would be generated by this, in my professional opinion, should not be a consideration. So keep in mind, it's already single-family zoning. If they chose to go through with plating at this point, none of you would even see what happens next. Basically, we go through the planning commission and keep going. The one thing I did want to talk about specifically is Jackson Heights. And this is a little bit of a unique situation, but we have seen it before. These areas that got annexed into the county at some point in time, however they did, typically by unilateral annexation as the city was growing, there are some roads that were put in by townships typically that do not meet our current standards, particularly for width. If anybody's been on Jackson Heights, you know it's a narrow road. 2-lane roads can still handle a lot of traffic. They can handle up to 10,000 vehicles a day typically, and you're never going to get there in this area. I don't care how much development happens, you're not even going to get close to that. The 2-lane roads, whether it's Jackson Heights, Douglas, or anything, can handle the capacity of traffic. There are some inherent safety challenges if you've got a road that's not wide enough for people to pass on it, like Jackson Heights is right now. What we have done in the past, following subdivision regulations for the planning commission in this situation, is if the zoning is approved, keep in mind, that does not even tie to the next part. That is just to determine, as Philip said so well, whether multifamily fits in this area, nothing more. What happens next, and the zoning actually doesn't go into effect until the property is truly platted. They have a year to plat for that zoning to stay in place. We've seen people do that before. A lot of developers want to see first if they're going to be able to get a change in zoning, because if not, then they're not going to go forward with the plan, right? The next thing they would do, not speak for the developer, but typically at some point here, they're going to file a plat. During that process, my staff in particular, the people with planning, we're gonna look at what's the subdivision regulations say, what we've done in the past, and there will be a requirement that for the development, that Jackson Heights has to be improved, either from Central or Douglas to the development. This is consistent with past practice, what we've done around the city, to have one direction or another improved to city standards, which means a wider road, which means curb and gutter. The last time we did this, we even required sidewalk. That part maybe is a little bit up in the air, depending on what's the makeup of the area. But it would be an improved roadway, which would also typically take care of the ditches in that area. So you at least got one direction that you can get the additional traffic two-way in and out safely. This is a challenging area. There's no doubt about it. We don't think it's fair to make one development go in and improve all the roads in the area. It's just not practical, it's not fair, but we think what does make some sense is that they provide a way in and out of the development that does meet city standards. So that would be the next step after this. The two are not tied together. And I would tell you that I don't think I've seen this before. And just from my perspective, shouldn't probably hold up the zoning for anything else, because that'll get taken care of with the next part of it. I've seen some things get tied together in the past. It's not in the true essence of how this process is supposed to work that gets hung up on this part right now. Decision should be made, just to say one more time, on whether that area makes sense for multifamily. The rest of that part will get worked out in the next step. So I hope that helps. If not, I'm happy to clarify anything else.
Thank you. So questions from the board?
I have one question. My concerns were the traffic thing. That's next. In the approval, it says it's under public services. All municipal services are nearby but will need to be extended to serve the subject site. I don't know what that means.
Basically, that means water and sewer are running nearby. So maybe it's on Jackson Heights, maybe there's a connection near 2nd Street. There's not water and sewer extended onto this 10-acre site. They're in the roadway, they're in the easement serving the development around. Extended means wherever and however it's developed, they'll work with the city on the trunk line that comes off or the branch line that comes off the main into the development to get water and sewer served at however many lots they,
And those improvements have to also be guaranteed by petition as a condition of approval of the plat. Plat won't be approved until petitions are submitted saying that they will extend services and be assessed for the same.
It's pretty typical of undeveloped lots, especially within the city. You have your typical water and sewer running where they are nearby. It's just actually extending them in to serve whatever new development.
So who picks up that cost? The city or the developer?
The developer is required to pay for that cost.
And would that be the same for the road as well? I don't know if I heard that.
That part of Jackson Heights, they would be required to submit a petition that the development pay for those improvements, correct?
I had a lot of concerns that both of you addressed all of them, so really, thank you. I don't have anything.
When there's twice as many homes there, when I'm worried about if they were single family homes, it'd probably be at least 2-car garages. So when you have duplexes instead, would there be room for 2-car garages for each?
A minimum lot size for a duplex is 6,000 square feet. And a minimum lot size for a single family home is 5,000. So yes, it's a 10-acre plot, and I believe, I don't know what and Will from Garber could probably explain a little bit more what their minimum lot size were going to be for this development, but it would have to meet our minimum zoning lot sizes, which if you look at any duplex around the city and that have 2-car garages, they have to be on that minimum lot size as well. So yeah, 2-car garages would be potentially expected.
That impacts how many you're gonna off-street park and all that kind of thing too. So then my other question is probably more basic than that. When this was all laid out, whenever it was laid out, this was single family because it was part of the big picture. So why would we go away from that master plan? And
oftentimes when land is annexed into the city, land in the county the base zoning layer in the county is called rural residential, which not only allows, normal residential uses in the county, but then goes to allow, agricultural uses and other things that you don't find in the city. When a piece of property is annexed into the city, it automatically gets the single family SF5 zoning, unless another zoning classification is requested. So more than likely, when this property was annexed in the city however long ago, it just automatically got reassigned to single family home, single family SF5, and has carried that designation since then. And that's how we have seen over the years. You have the general office zoning, which is where the front gate development is. All those patio homes are general office, as well as the office park that's there. As I mentioned before, south and a little bit to the east along Jackson Heights, there's a duplex development which was rezoned. I think it said in the early 2000s to TF3, so the same zoning that's being requested of this property.
I'm always concerned if somebody lives there and then they're, as part of their living, there's behind their place, they see what's zoned around them. And it's a zoning, so they say that they will be just like us, and then voila, it isn't just like us.
Anything else from the board? Okay, we'll go out to the community. So if you would like to make a comment, Nick, you're ready to time. Okay, and if you can remember to clearly state your name and your address so that Corey can get it in the minutes. So would anybody like to ask any questions or make any statements? All right, thank you.
So I'm Teresa Burks. I'm at 11825 East 3rd Street North. And first of all, I want to thank you guys for giving us a chance, because most of the people here are from our neighborhood and they didn't know about that. Single family versus multiple family, there are some duplexes in our area. They're on the outside. They're not in the interior portion of our neighborhood. So there's a section of patio home duplexes. They don't enter our neighborhood. There's an access street, but they are on Central. The little double is like right off of Douglas. And they've put in large apartment complexes. Most of this money goes to Andover because it's their school system, okay? So it's not a great benefit to us. The streets are a serious problem, and maybe that's not part of the specific zoning issue, but it has to be discussed and it has to be. We have had a lot of young families moving into our neighborhood because this is a 40-year-old neighborhood that did not want to be a part of the city of Wichita and was not given the choice. Our streets are gravel roads that they just threw a little asphalt on top of. We have nowhere to walk and ride our bikes except in these streets. And so maybe 200 cars up and down the road isn't such a big deal for you, but when you're walking, taking your dogs for leisurely walk, riding with your kids on bicycles, our only other choice where there's a sidewalk is on Central. And if you have dogs or a family, you're less than 3 feet from people doing 50, 60 miles down the road on Central. And they do 50, 60 miles down the road on Douglas. And I would urge you to drive Douglas. And I would think it would be very interesting when we get this new apartment complex in and the new apartment complex traffic going and see how many people are driving up and down Douglas every day. Our bridges on Douglas are very narrow. Barely 2 cars can pass. And if there's a big rig, you better, FedEx or trash truck or whatever, then you better get over. So I realize we've got a lot of information about roads, and they may not be specific to this, but this isn't the first time we're going to hear this, and this is something that we have to think about. We bought these as single-family homes in a semi-rural setting with half-acre plots, and quite frankly, I think that they should stay that way, larger plots, single-family, in the intermediate of the neighborhood, because we do have those on the outside of the neighborhood.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Who else would like to make a comment? Yes, sir. And please state your name and your address.
All right. My name is Kyle Kozer. I live at 11826 East 3rd Street. And I kind of prepared a longer letter, but Philip and Gary answered a couple of questions for me. But I'd still like to make a few comments. And first, I'd like to start off. I feel that the ruling made by the MAPC shouldn't count. I think it should be redacted and overturned. It was brought up by a couple of members at the MAPC. Has the DAB heard the case, or has the DAB made a decision, or why haven't they looked at the situation first? And a couple of them I felt that they couldn't make an honest decision on whether or not to allow this rezoning. I feel that if the DAB had heard the case first and they had both sides of the story, that maybe the MAPC could have made a better informed decision. I'd also like to add that in the plans that we saw from the developer, the initial drawing shows a dedication to continue Second Street from the development to the west to Zelta, and my street, or my neighborhood, is basically off of Zelta. And I'd just like to add that I don't think that there is a need for a second entrance or an exit into the development. There are several other communities in the area that only have one entrance and exit. Some of those are Kimberly Hills, Clubhouse Villas, Chapel Hill duplexes, and the Lutheran Church off of 13th Street. The residences at Waterfront, St. Andrews, St. Cloud Place, and Turnberry Circle, all off of Central. They all have one entrance and one exit and are pretty large communities. I ask that if a second entrance is required, the developer puts it on Jackson Heights. They have 660 feet of frontage along Jackson Heights that they can easily add another entrance and exit. And I demand that the dedication to continue Second Street be removed from the proposed plan. I know it hasn't gone to plotting yet, but I think when people start thinking about where they want to place all these duplexes and maybe connect streets and utilities, that they shouldn't even consider Second Street. There's no need for another neighborhood or another development to have traffic in our area. There's already enough non-residential traffic in the area with a religious temple off of Zelta Street. And those are people that are just coming and going for worship, and they're not part of the neighborhood. I understand the goal for the city of Wichita is to increase the population and generate more tax revenue. Even though this area is depicted as new residential use by the community investment plan, special consideration should be made to reverse this assumption. Thank you.
I do just want to address one thing quickly.
Yeah.
As far as this, and Phil, jump in at any time, right? As far as this case coming to MAPC before the DAB, that really doesn't matter, and it's not that uncommon. The district advisory board provides advice to the council member, not to the MAPC. So having it come, it's not that uncommon. District 6, Cynthia Clayco's district, has decided to meet 2 times a month so that won't happen, but it's not a regulation, it's not an ordinance. It doesn't have to happen, so
Right.
just FYI.
I just felt that since I think more than one person raised the question that
Does the MAPC even take the district advisory boards
We-
into comment?
We mention it in our staff report if we go to DAB beforehand, and that may inform and persuade. I don't know, I can't speak on behalf of the commissioners on how they make the decision. But yeah, we do mention that it has gone to DAB. We do mention what the DAB vote is if that case were to have gone to DAB beforehand.
I just wanted you to know, so that way you know nothing was violated in the process.
Yep.
We delayed this intentionally for a month to make sure that the residents were fully aware. So, and before we did that, we had a discussion, did we need to move the MAPC back, and we did not. So just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Great.
Thank you for your comments. Very well researched. Who else?
I just have a couple
Can you
comments.
please state your name and your
Karen
address?
Davidson, 235, and we actually live on Jackson Heights. We live right next to the property that we're talking about, in a fence row separates our property. We're talking barbed wire fence, because we have a horse on the property, on our property, and the fence row just separates. We've lived there 35 years. We were in the group that had to join Wichita, and we just wanted to remain single-family homes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate your comments. Does anybody else have comments from the audience today? Okay, hearing none, we'll bring it back up to the district advisory board. So what questions or comments do you have? then we will entertain a motion.
It's hard to vote on this without some plan.
And this is a unique area. I mean, I go down this quite often. We look at your turkeys out there and everything, enjoy it. It is, I understand your concerns.
Sir, did you want to state your name and address and make a comment?
If Ms. Morley's question more direct to you versus a comment about the particular.
Can you just state your name and your address for the minutes?
My name is Joe Groff.
Thank you.
1742 South Triple Brown Street.
Thank you, sir.
Question, I'd like to especially address to you, Council. Is the, are you aware of the council ever turning down any developer's desire to take a zoned area and bring forth a replat piece of property?
I have been on council since January, so not since then, but I've been on the district advisory board since 2015, and I think we've had a few cases. Philip.
Just from personal experience, I worked with the planning commission since January, and it wasn't a case like this one where it was looking to be rezoned for residential. It was a case where they wanted to rezone the property for a used car lot on 13th and Market in the Midtown neighborhood. Planning commission voted in approval, and it made its way to be heard by city council, and they overturned the planning commission and denied it. So it has happened, yes.
So is your question, has city council overturned it, or is your question, has the developer, once gone into the platting phase, changed their mind?
Probably, but in other words, the developers, developer has the piece of land, like sort of in this case, that's plotted for single family. And it goes before city council for a request to re-plot it, added for the level. I guess that was my question, because it seems like I've heard of any denials or turned down to developers to have this type of situation turned into.
So I can't speak if a plat has ever been overturned, but planning goes through a very similar process where it gets heard by the subdivision committee, which is in place of the DAB. Any vacation cases where you're vacating an easement or something, and any subdivision case go to the subdivision committee, which is a comprised of technical experts from different city departments as well as franchise utilities. And actually half the members on planning commission are part of the subdivision committee as well. And then from subdivision committee, they get a recommendation to the planning commission. It goes to the planning commission, and then the same period of time with protest, petition, all that other stuff before city council is all part of the same process, where everybody all in the area has the same rights to. And I've been part of meetings where there are people of neighboring properties, primarily out in the county, who are not thrilled of a new subdivision going in where there once was a field. It's, pretty much a standard example. I can't speak to if any of those have been overturned or denied, but everybody has that same right to them to protest, and all the same measures are taken into the effect of if proper protests are brought in, then it goes to the next level of city council for them to consider possibly overturning it. So it all is part of the same process. One thing, that was actually a good segue of something I wanted to ask permission to say, so if you let me say this. Though the same notification does not happen for the planning process, one thing we do in cases like this is we take down names and property information for interested parties and make them part of the notification list for when the plat does come into our office. I've actually been in several of those cases in the 4 months that I've been, 5 months that I've been part of the planning department. So should this move forward and get rezoned and the developer chooses to replat it, we can get your information. I give it to the staff member who handles all the subdivision cases, and then you are notified of when the plat does come into the office and starts the public hearing process, so that you're notified and aware, so that your voice can be heard. Where their notification, and forgive me, I don't know the statutes as to why the notifications are different for plats, but they are different standards, and that way the neighborhood has a better voice
to be heard in that case. So that is something, like I said before, once the vote is heard and this item is finished, I'd be happy to talk with each and every one of you, out in the back so they can continue their meeting, and I will bring any information back to our office that we need.
And that's a good thing, that perhaps you were a party to bringing that, to the table in the last 4 or 6 months or something like that, because it has been the case many times where the neighborhoods, was going to the body that the neighbors weren't informed. Right. Because they just like, for example, let's use the word tiny homes on 143rd.
And they were informed yet.
No, they weren't informed until.
Okay,
Okay.
so thank you, sir. No, thank you for your comments, much appreciated. Thank you, Philip, for answering them so well. Any questions, comments, or again?
Yeah, I would speak to the general comment that in Willow Bend, they wanted to zone across on the property, the office warehouse, and the planning commission went back, and it failed in the city commission. But it is hard, and you have to be good, fast, and organized. And the best thing is to have a homeowners association, a neighborhood association, because this stuff happens fast. And we got that changed, and they didn't do it. And then on the other side, they want to put a tire cross next on the other side of the neighborhood. And I think we wore them out on that deal. They didn't go to city council. So it can be done. Be fast and dedicated.
Thank you, Tim. Any, regarding this case, any more discussion?
I'm sympathetic to what apparently is a hostile takeover of the city. And,
This will be the second possible.
and it's, I understand the kind of neighborhood's transition from what was apparently a fairly rustic rural environment to denser. I don't know how to get around that. I mean, that happens with annexation. Property values, I don't necessarily think are affected by this. That depends on the quality of the homes. By the way, I think they're called paired homes now. We're moving up the vocabulary. Where I live in a patio home neighborhood, and right behind me are standard homes, and so we're considerably less expensive than those, and it hasn't seemed to affect either set of properties. So my concern still are the planning, which are considered later on. Otherwise, I guess.
I've got one question. It's kind of back to what I had asked earlier, and I understand these are 2 separate issues of the road, the zoning change. But is there a assurance or a protection that if this does move forward outside of the petition opportunity for the current residents, specials that pay for a new road?
Yeah, because we
It's
already
not
paid for the
necessarily
sewer.
needed.
And I think that's something Gary mentioned was, the city would, based on the level of development that would be anticipated in this area, the city would require the developer to pay to improve the road one direction or the other. And that's at the expense of the developer.
And we will, and if for any reason, which we wouldn't recommend it, but if for any reason, which is just like the last time you're gonna hear tonight, or the next time at least, if anybody else was ever to be included in a petition to pay for that, they would be notified of a hearing and would come here first before we go to the council. I don't expect that to happen, but it certainly wouldn't be, it would not just be something that shows up later.
Thank you, Gary. Good question. All right. Any other comments from the district advisory board, or any way you want to proceed? We do have to make a motion either to approve or deny.
I'd like to present a motion to approve.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve and a second from Joe. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's do a hand count on this one, just to make sure we get it right. So if you approve, raise your hand. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that what I said? No, 4. All those Nay, opposed? 4. Did I miss something?
There's only 8.
There's 8 of us, so it's a tie, correct? And can we leave with a tie? I believe so.
I don't know what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Do you have a chairman?
It doesn't pass. That's what you do.
I think we just do we know for the,
And it's part of the, it's part of the DAB vote, it's part of the, the city council packet. So they
it'll
know-
go to council packet, so we'll know that it was a tie.
I mean, that kind of still communicates the will of the board, is that it wasn't.
And again, and I know we say this every time, that we all know this, but just in case as a reminder, the district advisory board vote is not binding. It's just an advisory capacity, so having a tie is
Yeah, it's communicating the will of.
To the council.
communicating that it's split.
I have a comment to the lady over here. You don't have to have money to oppose something that you feel it's not right for your neighbor.
I don't think you've done
You-
anything. You just,
It costs me a lot of money to take off work to get it to
That-
the
But you gotta talk to your neighbors, you can organize just like Dave said. So it does not cost, it costs you some time, but you can do on the weekend or so. If you feel like this is horrible for our neighborhood, you can. And to the gentleman in the back, not everybody who comes with a plan to develop a piece of land gets a stamp from the city. So just a comment. I'm a fan of the city most of the times, but not all of the times. So not. But in fairness to the city, the staff is looking at the best thing that they can do for the city.
Can I tell you, Philip has been amazing. He has listened to all of our concerns. He has clearly stated and made sure we understood every bit of the process. So I meant to thank him when I spoke, so he's been amazing.
so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next agenda
Point
item.
of order, Councilman. There was a motion to approve the staff recommendation, and the motion failed.
No, we tied. It's not a pass or a fail. We're gonna put it on record that it was a tie. It's not a fail, it's a tie.
It didn't pass.
Or it didn't fail, it's a tie. So that will be duly noted and go to council.
So what does that mean to us? Nothing? I mean. are
At
we
this
just-
point, the next step is that it'll go to city council.
Yeah, I'd be happy to discuss with you, kind of what the next steps are. They've got one more item, and I'll use my time. And so if you like, we can set out so that they can see the meeting and we can discuss.
Thank you, Philip. And Philip, we'll chat tomorrow because I'd like to get the comments and be able to really address them. All right, thank you. All right, so we're gonna go on to the last agenda item because Gary's been incredibly patient and here a long time. So, and we have some community members who are also here for this issue. So this is for the sanitary sewer improvement to the portion of Lynch Addition to Travel's Air City. So Gary, it's all you.
Okay, I think that computer logged out, and I don't know how to log it back in without the library password. So I'm going to here as part of my computer. So give me a second here, switch this over.
So do you have, is it a PowerPoint, Gary?
Yeah. Anyway, I'd love to have it, but I can start talking anyway, so if you don't mind.
No. I will turn to Gary and they'll get the PowerPoint fixed, but we'll get started.
This is my last time tonight, unless you have something else.
Kind of Gary Jensen show tonight, we like it.
We had a request for extension of sanitary sewer in a neighborhood northeast of Central and Webb. And we'll get to that specifically in a little bit when we get this PowerPoint going, but in talking to Councilmember Tuttle, and she said in her time on the board, she couldn't remember talking about sanitary sewer extensions because what happens with brand new development in this city, these new subdivisions, that's not something that the DAB sees because they're 100% petitions. One property owner, it's a developer developing a full property, they sign the petition, it goes right to city council. What happens in these infill areas is the city provides the mechanism by state law to allow public improvements to be extended by petition. This is a little bit of the same thing we already talked about with the last item and those improvements and required petitions for street improvements. Philip talked about it. They've got to extend services. They've got to provide a petition for that too. I've been with the city for 24 and a half years, and everybody I know, even prior to then, nobody knows exactly when it started, but one of the reasons why development in Wichita, and whether people realize it or not or believe it or not, has flourished for a long time is because Wichita is one of the few communities, and it was mentioned earlier, that allows public improvements to be funded by special assessment. That is a big benefit to developers. There's developers that have come to Wichita exclusively for that. When you go to a lot of the surrounding communities, the developer, the person who owns the land to extend water and sewer, to provide drainage, to pave the streets, they pay for all of that up front. They pay cash, they pay for the contractor. They end up putting on the price of the lot, so they obviously get it back. But it requires a lot different business model. It requires a lot more capital up front. It requires a lot more borrowing capacity, all those things that go with that. Whereas in Wichita, the city carries the note. One of our, and I'm sure it's probably up there, and I'm sorry I wasn't paying attention because I was getting ready for this. Where the city of Wichita has a lot of their debt capacity is special assessment. But we have found that, again, it's been a huge component of our growth over the years. And I don't mean to speak for the city council, but I think I can say that the city council supported it, has supported this as a tremendous economic development tool, or they wouldn't have kept it going. So if you can you get out of that and just make it one big screen so we don't see them both? Is that possible? I want to show you some examples of different types of development, including infill and just big single projects and how this works. I tell you again, we provide the mechanism by state law to establish improvement districts, meaning the people who will directly benefit from the improvement are the ones that should pay for it. Everybody who lives in this community, at some point in time or another, your property paid special assessment for something. A lot of the arterial streets in this city, the major mile line streets, were built by city at large funding. But even then, at one time, those were probably put in by special assessment initially. All residential streets, all collector streets, anybody who's on water and sewer, it's a pretty safe bet that your property paid some level of special assessment for those improvements at one time. You go buy a new house, you see on the marketing material, it says specials for the property, how much might be left. The house I live in now, I negotiated with people when we bought it for them to pay off the balance of the specials. Is this the first slide? It is. So I'll go through these points real quick just to kind of formalize a little bit of what I talked about. But a developer of a new subdivision or property owners in an established infill neighborhood can request public infrastructure. The city of Wichita does not push this on anybody. We don't go out and circulate petitions. We don't tell people they need to extend water, that they need to be on sewer, that they need to pave their street. It's people that come to us. Seth Gochi is our small projects engineer. He deals with this on a daily basis across the city. We've got, within our core area, approximately 90 miles of unpaved streets. There are quite a few people that first time they come to Wichita, you happen to get off at Central and 235 area, and you turn into one of those neighborhoods, they think, oh my gosh, I'm on a dirt street. It seems kind of odd. But because of the way we've developed over the years, nobody ever wanted to pay for it. In my time of doing what I do now, there are some dirt street areas in this town, I bet we've seen a dozen different petitions, and they were never able to get a majority of the people in the neighborhood in the benefit district to sign the petition. We still have a lot of properties within the Wichita that are on well water, are not on city water. That can still be done. That's still your prerogative. Now, there are times when you got to have a permit to have a well. If there happens to be water quality issues. We've seen over time that KDHE has come in and said you need to extend public water. They've actually paid for it. That doesn't happen very often. It's typically someone that says, I want to be on city water. tired of the well water, it's not reliable, it's got a bad taste, whatever. They want to get a petition to extend water. Quite a few properties in this town that are on septic system, might be a lagoon, some type of alternative sewer. That's okay too. That becomes a lot more of a public health and safety issue over time if not maintained. And KDHE has a rule, a law that says anytime a property is within 150 feet of public sewer and they have a failing system that they have to hook up. In that case, we look at initiating petitions effectively. Hey, it's the law, we got to follow it. That says you are going to pay to extend sewer. Most of the time people want to do it. We also look, I would tell you on that part real quick so you don't think we're forcing the state's will on everybody. We still have the ability within my department and our environmental services and health group to look at the economic impact of forcing somebody to go on sewer, and we still allow them the potential to fix their septic system if extending public sewer, generally use a rule of thumb, it's going to cost more than double of what it takes to. We try to encourage people to get off of alternative systems and on the public system. Public sewer, but if they got to pay 3 times the amount to get public sewer of what it is to fix their septic system, we still try to work with them to fix their septic system. A lot of times people just want to get on the sewer. They're tired of dealing with it. And there's undeveloped properties in some areas. They still don't even have anything built on the property that never needed sewer. They're wanting to develop most properties. I'm not a real estate person. I'm more marketable if they're on public utilities. But not everybody wants that either. We have some people that live in the core of our city on dirt streets that they've told us, it feels like they're living out in the country, and they're not living in the country. They literally like staying on those dirt streets, and that's why they never want to sign a petition to pave the street. We talked about the owner's property within a predetermined improvement district paid for the project, and I'll show you some examples in a bit. And then the cost of the project is assessed as a special assessment. Within residential areas of the city, that special assessment typically gets assessed over 20 years. Pretty low interest. The city sells bonds. Typically, they've been around 3% or less. Not a bad loan if you're able to do it. That's what makes this whole thing affordable and makes it a really good deal for development within our city and why people want to do it. You can go to the next slide. The petition gives the city council an indication of support for the project or not, as well as the legal basis to approve it. I would tell you again, the city does not go out and knock on people's doors and say you ought to extend water and sewer, you ought to pave your street. We don't circulate petitions. Someone calls us and says, what do I need to do to get sewer extended, water extended, my street paved? Seth, following state statutes, puts together a benefit district, which I promise I'm going to get to here shortly and give you some examples. He gets that petition to the person who requested it. It's their responsibility to go talk to people in that improvement district and see if you can get them to sign a petition. At that same time, just so you talk real quickly about our process, we send a letter to every single person in that improvement district to tell them, hey, someone in your neighborhood has asked for a petition to do water, sewer, paving, whatever it might be. They're going to be bringing some information around to you, but we also include with them their estimated cost for their property. And I'll tell you real quick why, because we've got a long history of this, and we all learn things as we go along, and we've had over time, and one of them really came to light probably about 12 years ago now, start to lose track of time, maybe more like 10 years ago. We had a neighborhood that had signed enough signatures for a ballot petition. A ballot petition has signatures that's over 50% of the resident owners or represents 50% of the area. So keep that in mind. If you've got someone that wants to extend a utility to their property and it goes by 2 others, if they've got the biggest lot, bigger than anybody else's, they can get a ballot petition by themselves, but they're going to pay more. They pay for the square footage, so it balances itself out. That's what state law does. City council does not have to approve any petitions. They are not required to. Typically they do, because again, a petition shows that there's support of the majority within a benefit district. I wanted to come back to this deal of why we send letters out. We used to just get the information to the petitioner or the person that wanted to circulate it. They know we give them a set of rules. They know they've got to get to 51%. Typically, most people would stop at 51%. I probably would, if they felt like they had a valid petition. What was happening then, anything that's less than 100% petition would come to the district advisory board before it would go to council. So you get 49% a lot of times, or more, not more, or maybe a little bit less. They would show up to these meetings and say, I've never even heard about this. What are you talking about? Well, that's not what any of us want to do. We want to make sure people are as informed as possible. So we said, we're going to start letting everybody know ourselves, because I can't force a person circulating a petition to prove that they went and talked to everybody. Some people won't answer the door, literally. Some people live somewhere else. You never know what the situation might be. On this one particular project, I am absolutely confident, and it is what it is, it's the world we live in, that some property owners, after they signed the petition, got together after the fact and decided they didn't like the deal, and claimed that they were lied to, that they got the wrong information, that they signed under false pretenses, and it just got really ugly. So we said, we're going to start sending this information out to everybody so that they can't make that claim. It's worked really well. It hasn't necessarily gotten any more petitions, but at least people couldn't claim that. We had, not to get sidetracked in stories, but we had a sewer up on North Meridian one time that we had to get the police department involved because people claimed that their signatures were forged. How do you get around that? I don't know. But this can be a little bit challenging, but we've got a pretty good process in place. So if you go to the next slide then. I talked before, and this talks about how all developments, whether new or established, at one time were vacant fields. You saw a lot of that in the item you saw a little bit ago with single family versus multifamily. It's out in a rural area. That's how a lot of this city was at one time. I can remember even in my lifetime, what doesn't seem too long ago, that the city, you go out to 21st and Mays Road right now, I think of in particular, and seeing what's happened there was not that long ago, that there was absolutely nothing out there. It was farm fields. That all has flourished and developed. I say a lot of it has to do with this policy of allowing special assessments. It's a requirement to have paved streets, water lines, and sewer serving a lot before a building permit can be issued. The item you just talked about, where it's currently single family, if you weren't even discussing multifamily, if and when they wanted to go in and build there, they would have to plat, and they would have to guarantee that they're going to extend water, sewer, and pave the streets before they could build. We do not allow in the city limits for houses to be built and put in alternate sewer systems, to put in wells, or to be on dirt streets. The people that are already on them can stay there, but the new ones cannot. But this was not always the case, especially when areas had been in the county. They had a whole different set of rules. We just had a District Advisory Board 5 last week, a petition to pave a street out near Central and 135th, that not that long ago was in the county, and when those houses were built, there was no requirement to pave the street. Now you get to the point. Same with this project that we're going to look at tonight. It wasn't that long ago that it was in the county. There was no requirements for building to extend water or sewer, so at some point in time, people say, hey, we want to do something. I'll give you some examples. This is near northwest of Kellogg and 159. That Grand Mirror Court was part of a bigger development at one time, and they made some changes off the end. Sometimes these new developments, they end up with kind of a little bit of wasted space and no man's land. And at some point in time, they decided to extend that little piece of street off the cul-de-sac, that wasn't even there at one time, to develop that into 3 lots. So there was a request for petition to pave that little piece of street. The blue lot signed, the green did not. By state law, it's over 50% of probably owner and area. makes for a valid petition. You can see right there, that is from the petition itself. You can see the property owner signed it, the ones that didn't. Being less than 100%, we would have brought that actually to this district advisory board at one point in time, then it went to the city council for approval. Next one is, this is Pawnee and Greenwich, northwest of there, across from, well, it's west of Southeast High School, but this is a more typical new development, new subdivision. And it happened to be a stormwater petition for that. They'll go through and do sewer and water and everything else. And then you can see this petition. If you go to the next slide, one signature, valid petition, 100% of the owners signed it because there's only one owner at the time, right? But then you can see it's lots 1 through 69 and more. There's lots of lots, multiple lots here. One signature, valid petition. What that developer then does is starts developing, as they start selling lots, those special assessments for this petition stay with that lot. Just like any of you, if you've ever bought a relatively new house in a new development. One more example, I think, or are we getting on to our project? Okay, this brings us to our project in particular for tonight. If you look down towards the bottom left, where the solid green line is the existing sanitary sewer. Serving development that's there already. The properties you see to the right are not served by sewer. The dashed line would be the proposed extension, because the lots to the north are the ones that asked for sewer. So we've got to start where the closest sewer is typically. This is all by gravity, as much as we can get it. We're going to extend to the property, and we need to include everybody in between, because we can't run a sewer by property and leave them out of the benefit district. Even if they don't want to be on sewer, eventually they have the potential of benefiting from that sewer, so we have to include them. That's where the challenge comes for anybody who wants to ask for a petition to extend sewer. They're going to have to make sure they get somebody else to sign, or they're never going to get a valid petition. So this is showing the same area, the particular lots. Those in green signed the petition, right, Seth?
They did.
Those in blue did not. That represents 60% of the resident owners, almost 60% of the area. These lots are effectively the same size. This is a valid petition per state statute that we follow, because only one of those has to be more than 50%. Our estimated cost, total cost, this is design and construction, everything that goes into this. We have a construction staff that oversees, inspects, makes sure it's built for city standards. The city is going to own and maintain this sewer when it's done, but the people who benefit from it have got to pay for it first. Our estimated cost is $50,000. All of that costs going to improvement district. Because these lots are the same size, we split it 5 ways, $10,000 each. We provided that information to the petitioner and every property owner out there. It shows what the estimated cost is over 20 years. Breaks that out to monthly and yearly costs, so they have some idea and help people be more informed when they see the petition. What happens after tonight? Depending on what you do tonight, we were planning to go to the city council on June 18th. If approved by the city council, we will design the project, which takes several months. We'll bid the project, that has a little bit of time, and then we'll hire a contractor to build the project. It should go pretty quick. Overall, we can probably be done in about 4 months from the time if city council approves the project, depending on your decision tonight. With that, staff recommends that the district advisory board recommend approval of this petition to the city council. I hope that all made sense. I just kind of wanted to give you a background of where all this comes from, just to get to this specific project, and we're happy to answer any questions. Seth will answer the arguments.
So, Gary, thank you. That was a really, I hope, especially for some newer folks or some of us who need a refresher. I've been here a long time, you've been too, we've never talked about it. So that's why I wanted Gary to give an overview. So thank you, I appreciate it. So any questions from the district advisory board to staff?
I may not follow it as well as I should. You're going to be tapping into the closest sewer, right?
Yes.
It would bypass to get to this site, it would bypass properties that are not currently on sewer.
None of those properties are on sewer, correct?
So they would, but they could eventually benefit from. By having to
Correct.
tap into.
Absolutely. So just so you fully understand, there are, it's a little hard to tell, but you can see that there are some properties that have no structures on them.
Yeah.
We can't dictate what happens here. In 20 years, when their specials were paid off, they may still not have built on them. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is we got more than the majority of the benefit districts saying that they want the sewer. So now it is your decision as a recommendation of city council, and ultimately the city council, whether or not they want to approve that petition, because there are people within a defined area that do want sewer. I will tell you from my experience that more times than not, what will happen is people will either decide to develop a property. I can't dictate this and I can't predict it, but I've seen it happen a lot, where a ballot petition was approved because the city council almost always, in my time doing this, has approved a ballot petition going forward. Those properties either go ahead and develop or they sell to someone who wants to develop them because they are now on public sewer. And I'm not here to make that as a sales pitch. I've just seen that. And in my opinion, it's not always a bad thing because ultimately somebody's going to see the value in being on public utility. That seems to be how it works out.
It just strikes me that people in the benefit district are paying for the full access up. The ones who fill in later only have to pay to tap in.
No, absolutely not. Sorry. If you look at that yellow line, it's a little bit hard to see. Everybody here is paying for the full line. There's nobody that's getting a freebie out of this deal.
The benefit district is.
Because the people on the bottom are already on sewer. Go back to that aerial stuff.
So everybody south of the benefit district.
Well, the benefit district is, everybody south is still not on sewer.
So
That sewer doesn't go south of where that end is. It's just those 5 properties.
These people right here are benefiting, the 5 lots.
the 5 what? So 745, 47.
The people north of here still aren't on sewer. The people south of here still aren't on sewer.
But you're running, in order to get to the benefit district.
This is the benefit district. In the red, this whole thing is the benefit district. All 5 of these lots are the benefit district. Now, where I think you might be going, if you don't mind, I think that, I'm not sure which lot, but let's say, for example, 801 is the one that requested it. I don't know if they are or not. It doesn't matter. We still have to get to 801. We can't run a sewer by all these other properties because what would happen in the future is they would tap on and wouldn't have paid anything.
Okay, that's fine.
So you're tracking correct. This is why I think this mechanism works well. We got initially, hey, it could be, we see this all the time, and why these extensions don't happen, because it might be that 801 is the only one that won, and if nobody else signs, this petition's dead and it doesn't go anywhere.
But in this case, 60%.
But in this case, 60% of the people said we do want it. So my recommendation is based on that. It's the majority. We need to bring it forward to you, and we'll recommend to the city council that we think they should approve it, depending on what you say tonight.
I think the point is if you have only the 3 who want this done, pay for it, then you got 2 free riders.
Oh, sure.
And that's not fair either.
So that's what everybody pays.
Right.
It's hard to make them pay in the future and refund the others. So
That's kind of what I was.
yes, correct. I knew that's where you were going.
But they're not required to tap it. So if it passes and they do this.
Nobody is required to tap onto this sewer. What I was mentioning to you again is if there's anybody out here that has an alternative system, particularly septic, and they have a failure. So if you think about it, we go out, people call, and there's raw sewage surfacing from a septic system. That's not good for any of us. Think about all the rain we had the last 3 weeks, and if you've got areas where you got raw sewage, what happens? It becomes a potential public health. So that's why KDHE has that rule that says your system fails, sewer's there, you are hooking up.
Any other questions we'll go up to the audience? All right, is anybody here? I know that we have the back row for sure. Does anybody want to make any comments? We'd be happy to give you 3 minutes. Yes, sir? And if you can state your name and your address.
Thank you. My name is James Workman. I'm at 7800 East Donegal, but I represent the lot that was spoken of earlier, 801. I would like to develop a residence on that lot, and that area is extremely high clay, very difficult to get a sewer system in there that'll work. That requires an extremely large field. And so therefore, I would like to have city sewer at my location where I can put a residence with a sewer.
Thank you, James. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Sir, yes.
My name is Mike Bernritter, and we have the first lowest one down there, 745. And I agree with most of the things that have been said, but my issue comes from the fact that when you look at the aerial photograph, and the aerial photograph doesn't, I don't think it's accurate today. There's 3 big industrial buildings there, and 3. There's one on the next lot over, it's owned by the same people. It's the same consortium of 3 people running a big business and forcing in a residential neighborhood, and they're hidden under the residence neighborhood. And now the resident neighborhood's gonna have to eat this. And the value, I don't know why, but the value of the property has went from about $10,000 down to $4,000. And now you're gonna pay a $15,000 sewer fee on it. That makes no sense to the property owners. It does for the business, because I don't know who's in those buildings. You gotta go by occupancy and, what the building says. Those buildings hold so many people, and they're running it off of the septic system, but they have a rental house in the front that all that is hidden under is a residence.
Those are 8-foot fences.
Normally not
that are
allowed.
around huge industrial buildings.
Normally that's not allowed in neighborhoods,
And
but
yet,
it's gotten through with
They're the
security.
ones that want the sewer. On 745, we don't have a house, we have nothing there. We will have the hardship of paying for sewer for them. And when you say people go in to develop, if they're going in to develop, let them pay for it.
It should be commercial business.
I'm not, I just
Well, you
don't.
got 3 big commercial buildings there. The other 2 aren't shown for some reason. One of them, I think, is on the lot just above this, which they'll connect it to the sewer also.
Yeah, I just clarify a couple things, just so, and this is the way we need to do it. When we look at petitions for public improvements, we are blind to the land use, and we should be, it doesn't matter. And I don't get me wrong, from your perspective, if I enter your house, probably say, or property, probably say the same thing. From what our perspective is, we cannot factor in what the land use is. If somebody wants to extend sewer for whatever their allowed land use is, that is irrelevant to us.
I'll go back to the use of the building.
And
Property.
it doesn't matter what any of it's used for. If somebody asks to extend a service, it does not matter what is on that property. It can't to us. It is not a factor. And I would offer again, we are splitting this cost amongst 5 lots. And keep in mind, 3 of them have said that they want it, so.
I have a question to the gentleman over here. Are you implying that somebody else will benefit from that extension but is not included in that 50,000 division?
I suspect so, because I think they own the lot right above this picture, and it will connect also.
I will tell you, sorry, go ahead, Sal.
855, the lot you were mentioning, is already in the benefit district. And so the sanitary sewer will end there.
Who
So
owns
no
the
more.
lot that above 855?
I don't know, but they will not have any possibility of connecting
We
with
would
this.
not allow. They can't just go over and connect to the
No,
sewer and
no,
not know?
not at all.
Without extending it a full another lot.
I mean, I understand why they need it, because they're running a business and they have to have toilet facilities. It's not the rental house, it's a business.
Can you
And-
state your name and your
Sure,
address?
my name is Ryan Bendel, and sir, I respectfully disagree with
It's,
you.
what's your address?
Post Office Box 1641, Wichita. I respectfully disagree. I own the rental house that started this petition at 855. I do also own a building, a hobby shop back there, but it is absolutely not a commercial property. And if you would like to come see what I do in there with my kids and messing around with the wood shop and teaching my son who's an engineering student, a boat and that sort of thing, you're welcome to anytime, give me a call. I'd be happy to show you. But I will tell you that I am not running a commercial so ever. And the reason that this really came up, folks, is I have in excess of $12,000 worth of work that we have done on the septic system for my house at 855. And to be quite honest with you, it's just not right. We have 2 people living in the house, and the quantity of just the clay, I guess, and I've got some bad advice from 2 different plumbers. We've spent money and it's just not going on. I just want to hook up and have sanitary sewer.
And you own 855?
Yes, ma'am, that's.
Then if you're not hooking up, I don't understand why you're saying that's where your rental is. You said 855.
Yeah, 855 is, if you look, ma'am, on the right there to the right of this gentleman's pen, that's the house.
But they said 850.
I mean, but.
How many metal buildings do you have
Okay.
back there?
I
Sir?
only one, I need to respond to this title.
No, and we just want to make sure that up here, and if y'all want to have conversations, we can
But
do
you're
that
welcome
afterwards,
to.
but we just need to make sure that it's relevant to this topic. Yes.
James Workman again, 801. I have the other building, there's not 3, there's 2, and it is absolutely non-commercial. It's just a hobby shop for me and have some old cars, and you also are welcome to contact me and come look at the property. I'd be happy to show it to you. Absolutely no commercial business goes on there. And I'd like to build the residents up on the lot.
Who's the gentleman who owns the lot next to us?
The lot,
Where
north
do
or
you
south,
sell?
north of you,
Sorry.
That's
north of
okay.
you and south of you. I'm sorry.
No problem. Y'all can certainly chat afterwards. We'll make sure that you do it right out here when the meeting's over. So anybody else in the audience want to make any comments today? Okay, we're gonna bring it back to the board then. Any other discussions? Anybody have any questions?
I have to make a motion to
Okay.
approve code recommendation.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Thank you, Sam. All those, any discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approving staff's recommendation to approve? That? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes. Corey, unanimously. Thank you. The only other thing we have left is we just need.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn. Anybody second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say bye.
Bye.
See you next month. Thank you, friends. And thank you to the audience members who came this evening. Sir, that door is now locked, so you'll have to exit out this way.